SpaceX just pulled off another Space Force win, and it's making ULA's troubles impossible to ignore. In a launch industry now dominated by reusable rockets like Falcon 9, ULA's future with Vulcan Centaur suddenly looks less certain. And Vulcan's headaches aren't just reusability. They also tie back to the solid rocket boosters ULA buys from Northrop Grumman. So what's really holding Vulcan back? Where does ULA go next? And how did CEO Tory Bruno respond to the growing criticism? This year, SpaceX, not ULA, helped the US Space Force prove something that could change how quickly America can restore critical satellites. Here's what happened. On May 30th, a Falcon 9 lifted off from Cape Canaveral carrying GPS-3 Space Vehicle 08, the GPS-37 mission. It's a major upgrade for the GPS network, including military M-code features designed to be tougher against interference. GPS isn't just maps on your phone. It's timing, navigation, and a backbone for both civilian life and military operations around the world. But the best part wasn't the satellite, it was the clock. The Space Force executed this launch on a rapid response schedule of roughly 3 months from official call-up to liftoff. That's fast for a national security mission. The previous Rapid Response GPS mission, SV-07, was already seen as a big deal at about 5 months. Before the Space Force started pushing these accelerated call-ups, similar missions could take far longer, because the system was built for slow planning, not sudden urgency. That's why this matters. If a satellite fails, gets jammed, or a crisis changes what coverage is needed, the Space Force now has a tested playbook to move quickly. This isn't just nice to have, it's a strategic tool, and once you prove the system can sprint, you can train it to sprint again. So how did they pull it off? 2 things: preparation and flexibility. First, the satellite was already built and ready to be pulled from storage. Second, they had a rocket that could actually support a quick call-up. Falcon 9 flies so often that SpaceX can slot in high-priority missions without breaking the entire manifest. That kind of tempo creates options that other providers simply can't offer yet. Now the comparison becomes painful for ULA. If the Space Force had to rely on Vulcan Centaur for this GPS mission, the record probably wouldn't exist. Vulcan has been stuck in a slow churn of certification work, investigations, and supply chain surprises. Those delays left national security payloads sitting on the ground without clear launch dates, so the Space Force pivoted and shifted priority missions, including GPS, over to Falcon 9. A vehicle with a track record of fast turnaround and consistent success. The Space Force's message here is simple. The military can compress the whole chain when it needs to. Integration, approvals, range coordination, mission assurance, all. In plain language, they're practicing how to recover space capability fast, because future threats won't wait on long timelines. Meanwhile, Vulcan's pace has become its own story. ULA went into 2025 talking about as many as 10 Vulcan launches. Instead, Vulcan has managed 1 flight this year so far, USSF 106 on August 12th. That mission was Vulcan's 3rd flight overall, and its first national security launch after the Space Force certified the rocket earlier in the year. It was a milestone, but it was also a reminder of how late Vulcan arrived at the party. And the irony is sharp. ULA's next near-term mission in December isn't even on Vulcan, it's on Atlas V, the older rocket ULA has been trying to retire. Atlas V is dependable, but every Atlas launch also highlights the gap between what Vulcan was supposed to be and what it is right now. So what's slowing Vulcan down? It traces back to Vulcan's 2nd flight, CERT-2, in October 2024. During ascent, one of the Northrop Grumman GEM 63 XL solid rocket boosters suffered a nozzle anomaly. The rocket still completed its mission, but a nozzle event is not something you wave away. Engineers traced the issue to a manufacturing defect, and that kicked off deeper reviews of hardware, production processes, and flight data before everyone feels comfortable pushing the launch rate. What makes it more worrying is that nozzle problems have appeared in other Northrop Grumman solid motor efforts in the past. That doesn't automatically mean systemic failure, but it does raise the kind of questions that slow programs down. Is this a one-off, or is there a pattern? Is it design, manufacturing, or inspection? When your customers are putting national security payloads on top, they want certainty, not optimism. For ULA, this is a brutal bottleneck. Vulcan was built to carry the company into a new era. More launches, lower cost than the Delta era, and a long-term path forward. But in the launch, one supplier issue can freeze the whole pipeline. Cadence is survival, and these delays don't stay inside ULA, they ripple outward. For the Space Force, payloads wait on the ground, and planners lose flexibility. For Amazon's Project Kuiper, the schedule pressure grows. Put those together, and most of ULA's backlog depends on Vulcan flying smoothly. If Vulcan slows down, almost everyone depending on ULA slows down too. ULA says it wants to scale Vulcan to around 2 launches per month. On paper, that sounds aggressive. In 2025, it's no longer the benchmark. By mid-December 2025, Falcon 9 had already flown well over 160 times this year. That's a launch every few days. In other words, even if ULA hit its long-term goal, SpaceX would still be operating in a different league. And the biggest difference isn't just speed, it's philosophy. Vulcan is expendable. It's built to be used once and discarded. Falcon 9 is reused again and again. Blue Origin's New Glenn has now demonstrated a successful first-stage landing on an operational mission. Reuse is no longer experimental. It's becoming the expected standard. So where does that leave ULA? Right now, ULA's strongest card is trust and precision. Decades of mission assurance culture matter, especially for defense customers, but trust gets harder to sell when competitors are also reliable, and they can deliver the same mission for less money and with far more flights. That's why the online speculation keeps growing. Some people think ULA could be acquired. One idea is that Blue Origin could buy ULA, inherit contracts, and gradually shift missions toward New Glenn. Others argue Blue doesn't need ULA if it can scale on its own. Some say Boeing or Lockheed Martin could absorb ULA outright, instead of keeping it as a joint venture. There are other names thrown around. And then there's the darkest theory. Once the remaining legacy obligations are done, ULA could shrink dramatically, or be folded into something else, because it can't keep pace with the next generation of launch providers. With that kind of pressure, you'd expect ULA leadership to keep its head down, but Tory Bruno pushed back, and he did it in classic ULA fashion, celebrating accuracy over hype. In late November, he pointed to Atlas V's Viasat-3 F2 mission, launched on November 13th, and called it a bullseye. That mission mattered because accuracy in orbital insertion saves satellite fuel, and satellite fuel is limited. Less fuel spent on corrections can mean more years of service and more margin for operators. It's real value, and it's what ULA has always been good at. Still, while ULA highlights precision, SpaceX is expanding the battlefield with Starship in Florida. SpaceX has approval to develop Starship operations at Cape Canaveral's Space Launch Complex 37. Under the current plan, the site can support 2 Starship pads, while SpaceX also continues building Starship capability at Kennedy Space Center's LC-39A. Simply, SpaceX is trying to transform Florida into a Starship hub, not just a Falcon hub. Starship changes everything because it's a different class of vehicle. It's designed to be fully reusable and built for rapid turnaround. It also carries enormous amounts of liquid oxygen and liquid methane. And when you combine huge vehicles with plans for higher flight rates, you collide with a hard limit: the Space Coast's shared infrastructure. That's why rivals have been nervous. Bigger rockets require bigger safety zones. If Starship is processed and launched often, those safety zones can force pauses for nearby operations. The Space Force has acknowledged that Starship launches will sometimes restrict access for other users at the Cape, and the environmental documentation for SLC-37 shows restricted areas that can overlap with zones near other pads. That overlap is where the conflict starts. There is a possible way: better data. A big fight right now is how risk is modeled for methane and oxygen systems. Range safety has historically used conservative assumptions because the cost of being wrong is massive. But the industry argues those assumptions can be refined with real-world test data, which could shrink hazard areas without increasing risk. SpaceX is pushing for that shift. If regulators accept smaller, data-driven zones, it could reduce launch conflicts for everyone. And here's the twist. New Glenn and Vulcan are methane-based too. So whatever standard gets set around Starship won't just shape SpaceX, it shapes the entire next generation of rockets. Even if safety zones shrink, the deeper problem remains: infrastructure. The Space Coast is getting crowded, more providers are arriving, existing providers are scaling. Yet there are only so many pads, processing facilities, roads you can close, and range slots you can share. Building new spaceports sounds easy until you run into land limits, environmental reviews, and politics. So this is the moment we were in. SpaceX is proving rapid response national security launches today, while building a Starship pipeline for tomorrow. ULA is trying to stabilize Vulcan while defending its reputation with Atlas-level precision. Blue Origin is ramping up New Glenn, but it faces the same reality every launch company faces. Production has to keep up, because in this new era, the winners will be the companies that can build, fly, land, refurbish, and repeat without slipping. And for Blue Origin, the next bottleneck is simple: manufacturing at a rate, because even a reusable rocket needs hardware flowing fast. So what do you think? Does Vulcan still have a real place in a reusable world? Or is ULA already watching the next launch era move on without it?